BIC episode number 77 under the watchful auspices of Brett Favre. We're going to do kind of a general topic, and actually it'll play into the topic itself, talking a little bit about hobby content. And actually the topic itself is also a reflection of said hobby content. So it all comes full circle. So we'll definitely talk about that. A couple of things I'll share with you that I want to draw your attention to as well that you may be interested in. So we'll have a little bit of fun with that. And Eric will finally renounce the Boston Bruins and take up his life's work collecting the California Golden Seals. That and more on this episode of the BIC Podcast. About time you get some taste, Eric. About time you have some decency. Finally, a team worthy of being collected.
It's true. For those who may or may not follow my Instagram account, I recently picked this up at work. This is a 1970s pennant of the California Golden Seals. It's seen better days. It's in rough shape. But it's a franchise that doesn't really exist anymore until you look into its history, which, if you follow the history of the California Golden Seals and kept seeing how they moved, and they had a couple of different names. First, they have the California Seals and the California Golden Seals, and then they folded and moved to Cleveland and with the Cleveland Barons. Then when the Cleveland Barons folded, they merged with the floundering Minnesota North Stars. And then when the Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas, that is where the story ends. So if you follow it, the California Golden Seals are the Dallas Stars. And these two guys that I do this podcast with are huge Dallas Stars fans. So they're very excited that I have turned to the dark side and was looking at, collecting Dallas Stars memorabilia this week.
Yeah, that's right. And if you can see the visual, about goddamn time.
Yeah.
About damn time. Just finally some decency in you. For a brief shining moment, Eric, you were almost decent.
Almost.
Brief shining moment. Almost. Like let's not get carried away. Baby steps. But for a brief shining moment. So before I get into a couple of things, I do want to share a couple of things with you that I want to bring to your attention. I will include links in the description for it to you. So recently, I think just earlier today on the Clemente Collector YouTube channel, he did have Jason Cards and Comics, who I've had on the channel previously. They did tag me since they referenced the channel as well, so I want to thank him for that. But in addition to it, it was a good conversation, so I'll include a link to it in the description if you've heard some of the conversations I have with Jason. He's a very knowledgeable collector, has a lot of background in history. They talked a lot about grading and things like that, and he is kind of an OG grader who was participating in grading in the earlier days of grading. So he's got obviously definite opinions to it. And I think it was an interesting conversation. And if you've listened in the past when I've had Jason on, Jason has a lot of opinions, but he can also talk quite a bit. So he was able to share a lot of his thoughts and opinions on it. And as a friend, I did want to make sure I acknowledge that. So that's the first one. I'll include a link to that in the description. Second, which will actually play into the AMG Collectibles plug, is on the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel. If you want to check that one out, I'll include the scrolling ticker here for the video version of it. If you go check out the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, you can see that over this past weekend, Brad and Sherry got bored and basically ended up opening a case of 2022-23 Upper Deck Ultimate, which is obviously a very high-end brand. And originally they did it on Instagram. So this is a recording of the Instagram Live where illustrious, notorious, not notable, but notorious more than anything, there were people in the chat like Sanderson DeOr who were around doing this thing. Like, very shady characters were hanging around during this thing. But the best part about it is, and if you check out the thumbnail, what you'll see is there's two videos. There's one that's specifically the hit. I do recommend checking out the full break, which I'll include a link to in the description. I've updated the thumbnail to show, vindication, because after the somewhat painful cup break that didn't quite turn out, this ultimate break was a lot fancier. They might have pulled a one-on-one shield. And by that, I mean they did. So if you want to check that out, that's in the video. So they may have redeemed themselves from their original very poor break to a very fancy break.
if they pulled that out of one box, and they only opened one box, and that's when they pulled, I would say that is fantastic.
Hashtag rigged.
But I think they may have opened like 16.
No, it was a full case. It was a full case break of Ultimate. But just the
lot.
same, it was. Let's just put it this way: the card itself probably holds a little bit of value in the sense that I think they did okay. So check it out for yourself. Like I said, I'll include a link in the description to the specific break. You can check it out. They pulled a pretty high end shield. If you're going to pull a shield, a really good name to pull. So it wasn't like just a shield and it was just some
You'll have
rando.
me curious now.
Pretty good name. You'll check it out. It's in the thumbnail. You'll be able to see. You'll have a pretty good hint of what it is. But I would check it out.
Also, because without asking or even pandering, I'm getting 2 or 3 cards out of it. Supposedly, they just, the 2 of the most generous people, I've ever met, and they're absolutely wonderful. And just because I was happened to be in the chat and commenting and things.
Oh, damn.
There's their.
So you agree, Brandon, that it's a pretty good pull, right?
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like I said, Brad redeemed himself. He did pretty well on that. Nice, very nice break. So I don't want to spoil it. The point is, I don't want to tell you. Look, as soon as you see the thumbnail,
yeah, I didn't. I'm not.
The point here. The point here is not to spoil it. I would like you to check it out. I would like you to see it. It's on the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, so you can check it out. And then obviously we'll have the podcast episode, and we'll talk a little bit about it. We had the sports artist Rob Scott last week. That was a fun conversation. This will be a more conventional episode, but I think we'll chat a little bit about it. Obviously, since Sherry will be on, we'll be able to chat a little bit about it. But we'll get Mr. Heartland here to chat down the road here and talk a little bit about it, because that's a massive pull from a very nice product. So you guys can check that one out. AMGcollectibles.ca and the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel. We thank AMG for supporting the channel and this podcast. So there you go. Wanted to share that since I knew there were some connections to it. Brandon got a chance to see the thumbnail. He knows now what's going on with that one. And Eric, like I said, was in the chat when that was going down.
And I'm reportedly getting gifted the Boston Bruins cards that came out of that break. So, which is unnecessary but greatly appreciated.
Yes, it's all about the shameless pandering. Love it.
Well, when I can.
Listen, it works out, man. It's going to be. So I wanted to make sure I shared both of those. I did include a link to both of those in the description for you if you want to check it out for yourself. So we've got that down there. So let's talk about this. It's going to be one basic topic, but it's a little open-ended, so we can talk about it a little bit here. And what I wanted to kind of share, and part of the reason this topic came up was, number one, we didn't have any other specific idea that we wanted to touch on. In the solo pod, I touched on a couple of other little topics, but if you listen to that solo pod, you'll see the reason why I didn't think it required like this crazy in-depth discussion. They were pretty straightforward. And right now, that's kind of where we are. There's a lot of stuff going on. I did see that Neo had shared and then also reported on that looks like Southern Hobby is officially being cut off by Fanatics. We can talk more about that on the live stream. But again, even that is a simple topic. It's not like it's this deeply complex. We knew it was coming. It wasn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So, that's just another shoe to drop. We had the thing going on. I did mention it on the solo pod there with Panini, basically losing the license to Premier League. Again, it was a matter of time. The fact that they took away the stickers, though, I think is going to be very crucial. It may really hurt Panini because that's a big part of their business, especially the European business. The soccer stickers, that's massive for them. So that's a big deal. That may be Fanatics taking yet another serious body blow, trying to be like, so Panini, how much longer you want to keep this up? Because we can keep hitting you. We'll keep hitting you until you finally say no mas. So, but again, it's not a complex topic. So that's kind of the issue that I've been finding a lot. And that brings me to what I wanted to discuss here. And that is that hobby content is kind of in this little weird zone right now, because I've been watching a lot of the stuff that's out there. And you can tell if you follow a lot of hobby accounts, what you're going to notice is one of two things. Either they're not making as many videos anymore, or podcasts, or whatever the case may be, or they're kind of circling around to the same topics over and over again. And the specific thing that got me down this rabbit hole, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, is I was listening to the Stacking Slabs podcast, which I listen to. It's not always my cup of tea, but I do listen to it because sometimes it's interesting to get a different perspective. And he brought on a gentleman called Iowa Dave, who I was familiar with, but one of the things he had done in the past was he listened to a lot of hobby podcasts. But even in the course of that article and podcast that he did on it, even when he said he did a lot of hobby podcasts, it was a lot of the same podcasts over and over again. So you're hearing the same kind of voices multiple times. So you're getting a certain type of message. But he was giving his own critiques, his own thoughts on what kind of hobby content he wants to see. And it came to the same themes that I always hear all the time. Oh, we need to get back to collector driven content. And I've talked about that before, and I want to expand on that here in a second. But collector driven content, really focused in, tell me more about the cards. Obviously, I've got my own thoughts on this that I've shared on the live stream, but I'll come back to it here in a second. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on it too. Focus on the cards, focus on that. And basically, they want to see it return to more that collector-centric thing, which on paper sounds great. But I also have experience as a content creator in the space, and it might not be as easy as you think it is. Well, it's easy, but it might not be as successful as you think it is. Maybe would be the way that I would present that. So, Eric or Brandon, do any one of you want to take first crack at this? Any thoughts? Just general thoughts first, and then we'll add some more stuff to it.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I mean, I have to agree that it's things are a little slow, I guess, which is never good for hobby content, But it's nice to know that the hobby's not on fire. There was a time period where we could have done a 4-hour show every 7 days a week because it was something new every day. Last Friday we did our regular 4-hour Friday show, and the good portion of the show was about one-hit wonders in music.
Mm-hmm.
And people seemed to like it. We had a good audience, a lot of feedback, a lot of people were adding it too. I mean, and it went on and on and on.
And the chat was very interactive. So I want to come back around to this because that almost violates the concept that he was saying. One of the things he said is like, I really want to, focused on the card content. That's why I said I have some thoughts I want to share. But that live stream almost specifically violated that concept.
Yeah. I think if you know your audience, okay, and you don't go on for 4 hours just showing cards, I think hobby people watching these programs enjoy seeing cards that they're interested in, cards that they might not be able to afford, or something that's rare, or something that's unique. There's definitely a time and a place. I enjoy people showing cards that I don't have, ones that I could, oh yeah, I didn't even know that existed. I'm going to go chase one. Or, big whale cards, or
I'll also add something that's got a good story. Maybe it's not the craziest whale card, but maybe there's a good story behind why you were chasing it, or maybe the journey it took you to find a copy, or whatever the case may be.
I mean, just a quick example, right? So here's a 1962-63 Bruins team set card. It's not that exciting. I don't think if I just showed Bruins team cards, I don't think anyone would be all that excited about it for too long. The story is, though, if you look in the back row, there is a player making NHL history. And this is the first card that Willie O'Ree, the Jackie Robinson of hockey, is on. And he is in the back row. You could obviously tell Willie from the other players. And that can open up an entire conversation about him, his career, and his importance to hockey. I had the pleasure of spending like 3 hours with him last month. I mean, there's stories to these things, especially historically. Now, when you're dealing with modern cards, and you're breaking them online, right, on camera, and you're just going flip, because it's all base, flip. All right, nothing there. That's not exciting to me. To others, they can watch that stuff for days. That's not for me. All right. The only reason I watched Brad's content the other day is because Brad and Sherry are friends, and it was interesting to watch them go to do that. I can't just watch breaking, especially because they're just flipping through and it's all garbage. is in their minds, in their own minds. They're like, this card is trash. And I am only looking for ones that are going to bring me lots of money. I want to watch a show, whether no matter what the sport, it could be swimming cards, I don't know. But if you're able to put something up and say this swimmer here was in the 1918 Olympics and did something that nobody else ever did, I'm interested in that. So I like the history of it all. And
Sure.
I don't think someone showing me modern day cards is all that exciting. But that I am just talking about me and my opinions. I'm a vintage guy. I'm about the history.
I'll add the caveat there. Just as we go through this, I'm going to make sure in the course of the conversation, we'll touch on both, but I'll make sure that we always make sure to emphasize what is our preference. Because whenever we're talking content, there's preference, and then there's what the audience likes, and then there's a little bit of both. And then when you're deciding to make, your preference also plays into that as well. I want to touch on that. Brandon will understand that piece as well a little bit. But you're always playing to both sides, because if you're just doing it for the idea is always, oh, we'll make the content you want to make. It's like, well, that's true, but if you're making content that no one wants to watch, then you're doing it for an audience of no one. How long you want to keep doing that? That's one piece of the puzzle. But the other part of it is you do still want to be interested and engaged in it. Otherwise, then why would I want to make it in the first place, even if tons of people want to watch it? So there's a balancing act between these two things. And it's something that you always have to be constantly aware of.
I would not enjoy being on a program that just talked about baseball. Especially modern day baseball. I wouldn't enjoy it, and I don't think the audience. I think the audience would pick up really quickly that I'm not enjoying it, and I wouldn't bring anything to the show, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't want to do that. So you want to do stuff that you're interested in. This is a little more wide open, especially with Brandon, who has all these other different collections than I do. But Friday, we're based in hockey, right? We're mostly a Canadian audience, mostly Canadians on the show.
Yep, yourself included. No one more Canadian than I've ever met in my life. Frankly, you're way more Canadian than I am.
Sorry.
That's right.
So that is interesting. Now we could go off topic and talk about baseball for a while, or baseball cards, and that's fine for a period of time, but there's no way I could do that 4 hours every single Friday for the last 4 years like I've done.
Yeah. Now that we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to that in a second, but I want to get some thoughts from Brandon, because obviously you're on both sides of the fence. You're a consumer, but you've also been a creator. And you've made a different variety of videos and everything. So part of the reason I wanted to touch on this topic, because I thought we could literally go to this well all the time, but I don't want to do it all the time. But I thought, given that I listened to that recently, I thought it brought it back to the front of mind. And one of my first thoughts was also related to kind of where we're sitting right now, where we don't have the amount of news or really discussion heavy newsworthy topics anymore that we did. Once in a blue moon, we'll get a couple of things here and there, but a lot of it is very basic. It's to the point like, okay, do you really want to spend more than about 5 minutes talking about this? Because it's not that complex. It's not that deep. So it makes it a little bit less interesting. The only reason we do those long live streams is because we can talk about all kinds of stuff. That I think makes it more interesting for us talking about it. I think it makes it more interesting for the audience. Now, it's going to hurt some folks that really just want the card talk. And I understand that. I get it. But it's really tough to just talk about cards when, and like I said, I'll circle back around to this concept. But I just want to get your take. So your take from a person who makes and consumes. What do you think about how we're sitting at number one, where we're sitting currently number one, and then number two, also the balance between making what you want to make versus what you think the audience may be interested in. So just those two things, just to start off with.
So obviously, I don't do as much videos as I used to, and even when I did videos, I guess I would say I was somewhat niched, because I didn't really do a lot of necessarily newsy stuff. If there was someone like might reach out and ask, hey, what's your opinion on this or whatever, I did videos on that sometimes. But most of my focus, if it was news or updates, was obviously SGC. And, there's a reason for that, obviously. As a group submitter, it was the easiest and best way to, and also I had, you know, confident information from the source on the update that I could share to everybody. And really, that's why my channel grew, because when the pandemic hit, I happened to be like, that was when I started using SGC and I had gotten my order back. And then obviously PSA and Beckett shut down and everything, and it just kind of blossomed from there. But in it, I want to go back to something you said, and we've heard this many, many times. And I'm not saying that it's the case for everybody, but you hear people say we need more collector content,
Mhm.
right? And you can look throughout the spread of YouTube content, and there is tons of people that do videos out there. There is a lot of people whose channel is mostly focused on mail days or their collection or
Mhm.
what have you. And the majority of all of those channels are smaller channels. They will not gain the subscriber base or um, consistent viewership and that sort of thing. And I can also speak on this as having the reseller channel. You hear similar things over there where people will say, I like the what sold videos, but you do a
Mhm.
what sold video and like nobody watches it because you're just showing what sold and how much it sold for.
Mhm.
They're not interested in that, even though so many people say they want that. It's not really what is watched. And you know, we think about even in, this is going to sound stupid, but I don't know how else to explain it. The real world outside of YouTube, right? You think about the news, okay? People will, we can sit there and yell at the TV. We're tired of hearing the drama and everything else, but why do they do it? Because unfortunately, drama sells. Reality TV, people watch it because of the drama and everything involved. And I think that's where in cards, the newsy type channels thrive more because not only are they giving the updates, but they have the what is the cool kids call it? They spill the tea on, you know, all of the shenanigans that are happening. And let's be
Mhm.
honest, this hobby has tons and tons and tons of shenanigans always going on, and people, you know, are thriving and flocking to watch that kind of stuff, or how to make $1 million in sports cards, you know. That's what gains, that's what the algorithm pushes. And I'm not even saying creator wise. Maybe, you know, I'm going to refer to Neo. He made a comment a long time ago, and he kind of said it, you know, correctly. It may not be the content you want to make, but if you want to, you know, get the views and grow, it's the content you need to do. It's the dirty content that you need to do, because unfortunately, these algorithms, that's what they push, you know. They don't care if you have, you know, a great collection of vintage baseball cards. They're not going to get paid by those advertisers for you showing your great collection of baseball cards. They're pushing the newsy type stuff. So
Mhm.
um me personally, I've not only changed the content, or lack of the content because of the news type stuff, because I've never really my thing anyway. It's been more time. I never was too concerned with the ad revenue and stuff. And hell, when I first got monetized, I actually wasn't even monetizing my videos until somebody was like, I'm watching ads anyway. You might as well do it. And I've also adjusted what I'm collecting. And I have been debating, I've mentioned it before, of kind of sharing that to those that may be interested, but I know that's going to be a small audience. Um, Going to something that Eric mentioned with the live streams or even this podcast, you know, we're not sitting here showing cards for an hour or 4 hours on Friday nights or whatever.
Mhm.
People watch or listen because there's camaraderie here. There's differences of opinions. We joke around, we give each other crap here and there, and there is an entertainment aspect to it. So it's not just about the collecting, but there's another element that is provided to the viewers or listeners that is outside of just the collector space. And we touch on newsy stuff sometimes, or we call companies clowns and that sort of thing. And it's not just always mail days and stuff. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's not that simple. People say that's what they want, but it's not what the majority of people actually watch, and it's not what YouTube knows that people will watch.
Yeah.
So
The last point that you're making though, so now I wanted to get your thoughts on that. So thank you for that. But let me kind of focus it in a little bit on something, because one of the things you said is very true. But we always talk about the infamous algorithm. We always joke about the infamous algorithm. But I think one of the things in over the last couple of years in particular, YouTube has gotten better about finally conveying to people what it is. The algorithm is you based. And by that I mean the you. When Brandon is watching YouTube, the videos he watches, the ones he spends the most time watching, what he engages with, what he hits the like button on, what he subscribes to, the YouTube tailors itself, or tries to the best of the ability, to what you're actually watching. Like, you start watching a bunch of music videos and you suddenly start getting more music videos.
Yep.
It's not magical, it's not an accident, it's you. But Eric watches it and all you see is cat videos, and that's a completely different conversation. It's because that's all he clicks on. But the thing is, each one of us has our own personal tailored thing depending on what it is we're watching. So YouTube isn't going to lie about that. YouTube will look at it like, this is your history, man. This is what you've been clicking on. This is what you're sitting here watching this video from beginning to end. So clearly this appears to be what you're interested in. Our job is to keep you on the platform as long as possible. So we're going to feed you a helping of that as much as possible, or things that are close to it. And if we're wrong, you can click on things to tell them it's wrong, and it'll keep adjusting to try to nail that balance of whatever it is. But one of the things you touched on there was the whole thing about mail days and all that, and how we don't necessarily spend all our time showing cards. I know some live streams and some podcasts where they try to show a lot of cards, and that's their style. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So let me begin with the disclaimer. The opinions expressed here are the opinions of us, what our preferences are, and what our thoughts are. That does not mean if you like making a video about this, I'm not discouraging you. Make it if that's what you want to do.
And to be clear on what I said, I actually enjoy doing them. Like, there's some of my favorite videos showing my collection and everything. But Carlos made the point early on in this discussion. If I'm going to sit here and take, the 45 minutes or whatever it is to record the video, process it, if there needs to be editing, and then upload it and all of that crap, I don't want to do it just so it's on YouTube. Like, I want people to enjoy it. And there comes a time when you're like, okay, I'm not going to waste that 45 minutes because 14 people are going to watch it, So that's kind of why people stop doing it, is because although it's said so often that that's what the hobby content wants, it becomes redundant to do it when it's just, you took the time to do it, but nobody cared. So I want to make that clear. I am not saying there's anything wrong with it. I personally actually enjoy doing them myself. I was just using the example of why a lot of folks either don't or stop doing them.
Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to make sure I gave that disclaimer is I'm not discouraging you from making the kind of content you make. Whatever it is that you want to do, if that is what you're passionate about and you want to make videos about it, I encourage you. The exact opposite. I am encouraging you to make whatever you wish. And it is your time. It is your collection. Share it in whatever way you see fit. Now, with that said, also speaking as somebody who makes a bunch of videos, a ton over the last years, because to the point that it's days worth of content over the last several years, especially. Literally, I average about a day per month worth of content on this channel. So clearly I'm spending a lot of time doing this. But the point is that I want to make sure that I'm not trying to maximize the number of people that watch it, because if I did, I know there's certain things that would actually play more into the algorithm than others. But the point is this, is that people are proving over time that they're less engaged and less interested in that quote unquote collector content. Now, they might be more passionate about it. And I think, let me offer a theory of why I think that is, and a couple of thoughts on that. I think part of it is actually that, so say you're talking about a mail day. if I make a video about a mail day, it's going to get way less views than, say, a video about PSA doing something wacky,
Mhm.
or Beckett does something wacky, or something crazy happens. That video will do better. Why? Because even though it's a newsy video, whatever, it actually is a much easier thing for people to pinpoint on and have a strong opinion about. Because where
Or
they can have an
search.
opinion, yeah, but that's part of it as well. But also, if they're watching it, it's more likely they're going to have an opinion on it. They're going to have like something they agree, they disagree, they want to add another element to it, as opposed to a mail day where it's like a bunch of cards spread out. It makes sense for my collecting. So if I do a mail day and I show you some Mike Medano cards and some 53 Bowman color cards, so the mail day encompasses a number of different categories. I got some wrestling cards, so I got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You might think, oh, that's a cool card or whatever it is. And maybe you leave a comment or maybe you don't. But more than likely, if you're going to watch it, you're probably somebody who's already subscribed to the channel and is watching it anyway. You're not going to be some rando who's clicking on it. Hey, mail day. There's a lot of mail days out there. Like, why specifically would you click on this one over any other one? As opposed to, oh, this is a topic. This is something that's noteworthy right now in the moment. I'm watching some videos related to it. There's a greater likelihood of you clicking on that at the moment that it's relevant versus a mail day where it's like, but I don't know what this person collects. I don't know who this is
Mhm.
really. So if you're not already subscribed to them, or you're not interested in their personality or the way they describe things or whatever the case may be, you're just going to be less inclined to click the button flat out. So that's the reason why some of that doesn't go. Now, let me give you an example of a piece of content. Like I said, I'll try to cite examples where I can. Let me give you an example of a straightforward, relatively simple piece of content that works in some cases, but maybe some more interesting to some folks than others. So Orlando, Collector's Dream. A Collector's Dream has recently done some videos where he's gone through the Alan Hager book. So if you old school people remember Alan Hager, he did a book that had a lot of pre-war stuff on it. And what he's done is, by the way, not a bad idea. I'm not knocking it at all because it works. He's literally gone in, opened the book, and he's broken it up into multiple videos and gone through some different ones. Now, he didn't just go there and read what was in there. He also interjected some thoughts. As a collector or someone who's gone through this book multiple times, he's interjecting his own thoughts. Guess what? That's not dissimilar to what I was doing with some of those old 90s Beckett's. I was going through them, showing some articles and doing whatever. And some people really like those. And my intention is to bring them back. It's just taken me a little while to read through some of the stuff I've got in my back catalog. But I want you to think about that. In principle, is there more basic kind of content? Like literally, I'm putting a camera on a magazine or a book, and I'm just going through it, flipping through the pages, and maybe adding a little bit of flavor to it. Is there some interest in it? Yes, absolutely. And actually, some people have really enjoyed those, and that's actually done okay for me. And I think it's done well for him as well. But part of it is because his audience already has an interest in that. So they're already inclined to be interested in it. Whereas opposed to somebody else, maybe somebody else is randomly looking. I'd like some more information on some of this pre-war baseball cards. Well, if they happen to come across that, maybe it's helpful. So there is good information there, but it's a very straightforward way of doing it. It doesn't always work that way. It's very tricky to find the balance of, so what are you trying to do? Just showing off some cards, maybe it works. Some people are particularly good storytellers. And if that's the case and you get caught onto it and you're really interested and engaged in the way they do it, that could work for you. But what's going to get the most views? But by comparison, what's going to get more views? One of those videos or Dustin doing a video on the latest Fanatics did a thing. Or Neo
Yep.
does a video. Hey, Southern Hobby has been dropped from distribution from Fanatics. Which one's going to get more views? You tell me.
Every time.
Every time. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. They both have a place, and you may be interested in it, you may not be interested in it, but the proof is in the pudding, right? The numbers don't lie on these things. The problem is that when you're trying to do collector centric, so I'll bring it back around to collector centric content. As soon as you do that, it's a cool idea, but it's also very niche. So let me go back to what Eric was saying a little earlier. Okay, if I sit here, and I can do it, I could sit here and say, all right, I'm going to commit to a video series where I'm going to talk about all the sets of the 1950s, either that I've collected or that I've followed or that I've studied or spent some time on. I could do that. I could go set by set and talk about a lot of them, and I could do a whole series of them. Talk about all the Bowman sets of the 1950s, talk about right through the end of 55, and start talking about all the top sets of the 50s, and maybe talk about some of the off-brand ones, because even though I haven't collected all the sets, I've collected vintage for a long time, so I may have some thoughts on some of these sets. I can talk about some of the individual components of it. Guess what? There may be an audience that is super interested in that. And I'm sure Eric will sit there in bated breath and just watch every single second of it without fail. So the point is, if you're already subscribed and you just want to support and do whatever, you may do that. Or if you're somebody who specifically wants somebody to talk about the 55 top set in some depth, that may be of interest to you. Because if you do a video specifically for that, that may be of interest to you. But what if you're not? It's so niche. It's so like you've gone such down a narrow path, so niche, that the audience is going to also be niche.
Well, it goes back to what Eric was saying, you know, like he would enjoy watching someone share their collection, but not necessarily modern type cards or whatever, like the breaking aspect and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But to share with the niche thing, you're not going to sit there and worry about somebody sharing their baseball card collection or their basketball or their football or, you know, whatever. You're going to watch what you're interested in, which is going to be hockey or bicycles or whatever. So that's cutting, like when you do those type of collector videos, you're cutting out, first of all, the audience that's only watching YouTube videos for the newsy stuff or the drama or whatever. You're wiping them completely off the board. But then if you are baseball, you're then cutting out all of the other audiences of the people that have no interest in baseball. So each time you do that, you're chunking it down further and further. But if you do PSA or you do Fanatics or, you know, whatever, you have a much broader audience out there, because even, you know, even if you don't use PSA, you might be like, oh, what did they do? What did they update? What did they, you know, what did they make better? What did they screw up on? What did, you know, so it picks those people, even if they are not PSA users. So that's kind of another angle from it, is the different types of content cuts out your audience by a large margin sometimes.
Absolutely. That's the reason why I wanted to make sure that I wanted to give examples. I wanted to kind of use the very narrow and very specific in some of that. And I talked about it a little bit earlier. I gave the example with Orlando, A Collector's Dream. What I'll do, if I remember, is I'll try to include a link in the description to one of the examples that I gave about the pre-war collecting, where he's going through this book. And inside of the very same channel, so I'm looking at it right now just so that I can give you an accurate kind of vantage point here. So I've got a handful of videos beside each other, back to back to back. Okay, so these are all videos on the exact same channel. So there was a video about 5 days ago that was from that book. It was part of that series, and it was Guide to Collecting Pre-War Cards. It's titled very well. It's very clear what it is. It's titled very clearly. Part 4, Cracker Jacks, etc. So he's in that portion of pre-war baseball, which I'm familiar with, and I think it's very good. Like I said, I think in concept, I actually really like the series idea. I think it's kind of a nice idea. And by the way, if you're interested in it, it's not a bad place to get some good info, because he's going through some interesting information there.
And
now, go ahead.
Just real quick, to kind of share as an example here, and this isn't to knock, I'm going to say straightforward, this isn't to knock what Orlando is doing or what you were doing with the Beckett. But think of it this way. A lot of these newsy videos are literally taking an Instagram post or a Twitter post or an email and going on doing a video. And it's almost a similar thing as taking that book and breaking it into the parts, or a Beckett and breaking it into the parts. You literally are just reading the documentation or sharing the documentation with some opinions. The same way a lot of the news stuff is presented. You're taking an email, an Instagram, or a Twitter post or whatever, and sharing that information, but maybe throwing a little bit of opinions or whatever into it. So they're actually similar to somewhat of an extent.
Yeah, I think though there is a little bit more depth. Like I said, the point of this is to give you an example, just so that you can visualize it. And it's a little tougher when you're taking, like I said, a Twitter post, a specific article or whatever, and then trying to extrapolate it into a whole thing, versus you're taking a bunch of information, adding that other component of it. So the video in question, the one that I was talking about, is 26 minutes. which is obviously a lot more in depth and a lot more detailed than some of the examples we were giving. But the reason I wanted to use this specific video is that right before it, so that was about 5 days ago or so. The day before was part 2 of a pre-war vintage card reveal from SGC. So an SGC return, same channel, same individual, same everything else. The part 2 of that pre-war vintage card reveal has over 200 more views than the one related to going through the information. People were interested in like looking at some of the cards that came back. SGC reveals, PSA reveals, got my grading return back. That's one where even though it's a showcase kind of video, people tend to be a little bit more interested in those. That's like a sub-genre there that kind of people are interested in it. Even more so than just a regular mail day, even more so than some of the other ones, because people will specifically click on it and say, oh, card reveal, insert a grader here, card reveal this. They're curious. The curiosity gets the better of them. They see the 3 letters, SGC, PSA, BGS, whatever. And then, well, BGS very rarely. But the point is that they see the 3 letters, grading reveal, and they're suddenly a little bit more interested. That's why I wanted to use apples to apples, same channel, and a day apart. These are right within a day of each other.
To give you even a better example, to prove your point, spot on. So obviously I do the SGC submissions, and I do my previews, and then I do my reveals. If you go through and look at all my videos, the reveals usually get almost twice as many views as the previews. Mm-hmm. Even though they are the same cards, mm-hmm. more people will watch the reveals to see what cards came back, what grades they got, all of that sort of thing. Even though the previews are cool because you're seeing what people are sending in and everything, and it kind of gives that, that raw focus to them, seeing what people are collecting or grading or whatever. The reveals normally get nearly twice as many views as the previews.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, this plays out over time. So I used Orlando's channel as an example, and just so we're fair, I'm going to use my own channel as an example. Now I'm literally looking at the analytics. I'm looking at the videos right beside me here on the screen. This is back in late February, early March. So I'm gonna give you 4 videos in a row. These are all 4 videos within days of each other. First one was a podcast episode we did on the 3.72 million 79 O-Pee-Chee case. The title has 3.72 million 79 O-Pee-Chee case. Funny enough, that had a little uptick in views and a little bit more people paying attention. 2 days later, PSA acquires SGC. That video did reasonably well. More of a newsy type thing. People were a little more engaged in. A couple of days after that, early March mail day, a fraction of the amount of people clicked on that one. Shockingly. I don't know why. I don't know why. It just wasn't. So, but I'm using my own channel because this is the same channel. We're keeping one of the variables consistent. It's the same channel. So 340 views on the first one, 427 on the second, 79 on the mail day. Okay. Very next video after that, 3 days later, SGC sale blowback in Topps Big League. It was the podcast episode after the SGC sale, 557 views. Did I gain a bunch of subscribers, Eric, between one and the other? No, I didn't. There was an impactful difference in that. The topic was just more interesting to more people. It was more broadly interesting than a specific mail day. The only reason you're going to care about my mail day is if you're already following the channel and you want to support, or if you are interested in seeing Mike Medano cards. That's about the only reason why you would click on the mail day videos. And I know that. I do it for my own documentation purposes, for my purposes. So I understand. I still make them for that reason. But I also know less people are going to watch those than if PSA does something, or if SGC does something, or if Fanatics does something. If I make a video on that, that will do much better than an equivalent. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 day apart, hours apart. It makes no difference. More people will watch that video because of that. The collector-centric content, there is still a place for it. So bring it back around to this concept. There's still a place for it, but you are also limiting your audience. And a lot of times people who are making it are going to realize that after a while and be like, well, but you keep telling me you want me to make this, but then who's the person who's the audience? Who's watching it then? It's tough to make stuff where less people are watching it. It really is. Just keep that in mind. It has nothing to do with AdSense. It has nothing to do with sponsors. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just very discouraging to put an equivalent amount, in some cases more effort. Because imagine you sit there and you really research and do, and go and dig into it, as opposed to you read a Sports Collector's Daily article, skim through, read through it, find the key points, the key salient points, literally do a screen share, click screen grab, talk over the key pieces, upload, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And that will do 10 times better.
And
after a while, which one do you think you're going to do?
Most cases, this is a sad fact as well. In most cases, opinions or reactionary videos will get more views than factual or data-driven, like informational learning, teaching type videos. Like if you're trying to teach someone about, a set in the hobby or whatever, they will get less views than someone's opinion or reaction to a topic in most cases.
Well, that goes with just, look at the nightly news.
Right, the drama.
The nightly news, especially cable news, very rarely gives you facts. It's a panel discussion with a bunch of partisans on the right or the left, giving you their opinions and talking to you about how horrible the other side is. I would love a news channel actually just to have facts again. This is what happened today. This person went here, did this, went home. Okay, great. I don't care what your opinion is on that. So that's how we take in information for important stuff. It only makes sense. That's how we're taking in information on the hobby, fun, free time stuff. No one wants to hear us come on here and say, "Oh, well, these are the facts. This card sold for $10,000. Good night."
So it goes back though to what I was saying a little bit earlier. So like I said, in the course of this conversation, I want to make sure we touch on a couple of things. But one of the key points that I made a moment ago, a couple of minutes ago here, was that part of the reason that I believe this to be the case, and it plays into your example as well, Eric, is that the just the facts approach doesn't leave a lot of room for the audience to also give their opinion. So the engagement piece, so when we're talking about online, we're measured in engagement, right? So we're measured in engagement. And by the way, that's positive or negative, just engagement. But again, you show a mail day, unless someone really passionately wants to tell you how much they hate this card, which can happen, but it's very rare that someone will take such a passion. Again, number one, why'd you click on it in the first place? If it's literally a mail day. But secondly, are you really going to spend that much time taking a passionate stance on oh my God, I hate the red parallel of this? Very unlikely that it's going to solicit that type of response. As opposed to
on Kabooms and that other one I hate with the cities behind it. Yeah, whatever.
Perhaps the downtowns. Yes,
yeah, I might do that. Yeah.
But aside from that, most of the time the reaction is, "Oh, some nice cards. Hey, congratulations, nice pickup, whatever." And that's assuming that the person even wants to take the extra moment to fill in a comment to engage, as opposed to this news thing is and then what do you see in the comment section? Oh, this is what's wrong with the hobby, and then or they should do this or that. But you'll see a bunch of comments, and then they'll chat with each other, and you'll see all this engagement. Why? Because the video itself, the content, actually offered the opportunity for the viewer to interject their opinion into it. It was something that they could cling on to and actually be able to interject theirs, and that creates more engagement. And engagement in turn tells YouTube, more people are engaged in this. They're sitting here watching this. Therefore, push more of that out there. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We always say the algorithm, but the algorithm is responding to you. The algorithm is responding to the stuff that you're sitting there watching in its entirety. It's following the stuff that you are engaging in. If you are passionately typing in with anger about XYZ or happiness or whatever it is, then there's more engagement. And then it knows to feed you more of that because it knows you'll respond. As opposed to the other one where oh yeah, nice mail day. But it's only once in a blue moon you'll even leave a comment, if that. And then that's it. And That's the reason you get less of that. So the collector-driven content that they want so badly is the one that gets the less engagement. And that's why it doesn't get pushed as much. So again, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. There is a graveyard of YouTube channels going back to the ye olden days of YouTube, where people were sharing their mail days and their pickups and all these things going back decades. And you can't see it. It's buried in the YouTube history, in the annals. But if you go find these specific channels, you can find those videos, thousands of them, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of them. They exist. They all do. But nobody watches. Go check the view counts on some of those. 20 people
And
saw
a
it.
lot of that changed. A lot of it changed with the newsy type stuff. I think more so, obviously, with the pandemic. You know, people were at home, more channels popped up, more news was coming out, you know, the hobby was booming, which, not to get off the subject, but there was something I was thinking about earlier today, and I thought it would be a good question to pose. And if people have made it 51 minutes into this video, or listeners, engage with us. Let us know your opinion of this. But I was thinking about it, and looking back, you know, we talked about the junk wax era in the early 90s. And then we look at what happened during the pandemic, like the boom, and obviously there was a little bit different element there. But I was trying to think of where peaks were kind of like the hobby would blossom out, and what was kind of similar in those moments. And right now, I would say the hobby is strong, but it's not like on fire or whatever. You know, we don't have the fire emojis going like Eric's Instagram. But there was something that I kind of similarly connected. And as oddly as it sounds, would you guys agree that it feels like basketball could be a driving factor to these moments? And I say that because I was looking at 90, like obviously 86, you had Jordan and all that, but the early 90s, you had Jordan on fire. Then you had 92 Shaq's rookie. And it just felt like basketball was like the thing because you had Jordan, Hakeem, Shaq, like all of the big names of the 90s players. And then looking at the pandemic, you had the Lukas and the Zions and the John Morants and all of that stuff. And it was like booming again. And you connect those and they have like the smaller rosters. And then you have these like hyped players. It almost feels like it was attracting people into the hobby, and then maybe they might piece off into football or baseball or whatever, but it just felt like that was kind of like a similar thing. And I don't want to get too far off the topic, but it was just something I wanted to pose and ask.
Sure, and I think I'll leave it for the audience if they want to kind of chime in on that piece as well. I'll just say high level, and it might be worthwhile for a Friday topic. I'll just say high level. I think that you're right that the smaller roster sizes made it easier to key in on certain figures, but I do think the pandemic era is where it specifically took off, because I remember the Jordan rookie, the 86 Fleer. That one went up by multiples right around the times of the Last Dance and all that stuff. The Jordan rookie had always been popular, but basketball didn't really drive the market to that degree. Going back to the 80s and early 90s, it was baseball and the prospects and all that were driving it. And then we had that boom period ended, but then the other sports and everything kind of kept chugging along, but things got quiet for a while. And that included basketball. Basketball was still around in 1997, 1998, 1999. It didn't disappear. And LeBron started in 03, I think it was. 03, I believe, is when he started.
I just really remember the hype behind Shaq. I mean, and you look at all the classic cards that came out with Shaq in it and everything else. And then obviously followed up with 96. You had a huge draft class for basketball in 96 with Kobe and Iverson and Ray Allen and all of those guys. So it was just kind of like, it just felt similar. And, you know,
I think if you were in that segment of the hobby, though, like I said, we always talk about the expo. Today, you have some basketball guys at the expo, whereas years ago you didn't. In the 90s, we didn't have those guys. It didn't matter that Kobe. No one cared. We knew who Kobe was. We knew who Shaq was. We knew who these guys were. And did dealers have them on the tables? Yeah, sure. But like a fraction. And you can say, well, Canada, you know, hockey more. Like, yeah, I understand. But today, you'll have Michael Jordan cards on tables. Today, you'll have Shaq cards on tables. Today, you'll have Luka cards on tables. So it's not like we didn't ignore. We had the Toronto Raptors, the Chicago Bulls in their 72 win season sold out a larger version. They actually did it at the Dome. They didn't have an arena yet for basketball, and they sold like 30,000 seats at the Dome. So basketball could draw if it was the right situation. You had the Bulls in the middle of a historic run, and they were able to draw a huge crowd to go and check it out. So basketball, we have televisions, we had satellite, we could watch basketball. But the point was the hobby didn't give a crap here to that degree. Was people still interested? Absolutely. In the 90s, there were totally people chasing it. But the fact it went up by so much in this recent boom period told you that it had more room. So the 90s didn't actually lift it to the degree that it would happen almost immediately. So as soon as the opportunity came around, this time we were able to. Kobe did this.
In addition, I wasn't even necessarily talking dollars or values of the cards. I was talking about the kind of bringing in the crowds or the production uprising of the cards being connected to it, not necessarily the value peaks or booms, because let's be honest, the early 90s was, even though there was a shitload of it out there, it wasn't all that expensive. So I was talking more of the interest driven side of it.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I think I just got to go back and look at basically what happened with the inserts of that period. We'll talk late 90s, early 2000s. When 03 happened and Exquisite happened, they did it because LeBron came. Because they had that specific rookie. You know, you can ask Carvin all about it. He'll tell you. But the point is that they used that as the opportunity. That was their launch off point. In hockey, the Cup was the double rookie class. You had Crosby and Ovechkin. So they look for these inflection points, these opportunities. Kobe wasn't enough to get that done. Nobody was looking at Kobe that way. Now, that didn't mean he wasn't a great player. That didn't mean they weren't interested. That didn't mean they weren't engaged in it. I remember when the Raptors had Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and they had all these young guys. And this is the local team. But you go to the card show, trust me, you got some cards from them, but it didn't matter as much. But we're still not looking at basketball that way. There was still interest, yes. But the fact is, to your point, you said it's not about the dollar, but the dollars is still a reflection. It's still a reflection of where our dollars were smaller, but when it goes like this, all of a sudden, almost overnight, it tells you there was a lot of room left in the roof of it, because it was like we were sitting kind of plateaued at a certain level, and then suddenly you shoot up 10x, 15x, 20x, 30x, and it's like, well, that tells you there was more ceiling there available as soon as the money suddenly showed up. Because otherwise, guys were kind of trading around the same cards for a while, and they were kind of hanging around a certain level, and that's where the level they were at. Basketball was popular from the Dream Team on, but shoes and in a bunch of other things, and the collectors who were collecting were the collectors. It wasn't all these other folks that chimed in and participated in it. But if you're a basketball guy, then of course, then all you're seeing is basketball, so you're going to know. Oh yeah, we're all into it.
I believe it or not, I was huge into basketball back in the day. Now I don't even watch it. So.
Yeah. So I think if you were in it, I think you were seeing it more than someone who was just looking at it more broadly and collecting a little bit of this, a little bit of that. For you, it was more open-ended. It was a little more broad-based. I don't know who Chris Ford is, but one of these days we got to figure out. I think he might know who the first three-pointer was in the NBA. We're going to find out one of these days. But one more thing I wanted to touch on there. So kind of leading back around to what we were talking about. We discussed a lot about the motivation behind what leads certain type of content to be made, the thought behind it, and what people's attention seems to be drawn by, that portion of it. Let me kind of flip it onto the other side, though, for a minute. Let's go back as consumers. I got to be honest with you, and that goes playing into the live stream that we talked about from this past Friday. I don't want to sit there and talk about cards for 4 hours. I don't care what they are. There was a moment in time where there was enough news stories where you had the business element and you had some speculation element. That actually is what made those discussions interesting to me. It wasn't just the cards themselves. It was just all the things around it. But if you're sitting there talking about cards, it's like, no, I'd rather talk about music or movies, and yes, cards, but also some other things. Because, like to your point from earlier, Brandon, we have fun talking about a couple different things here. We'll have some fun with talking about here. You wouldn't even know it listening to the podcast. I'm buying cards all the time. I bought a couple of cards today. I even told you guys that it's like I'm getting the borderline hoarding on one of these things. It's getting a little scary. Like I'm scared myself a little bit, you know. But the
I
point is that
tried to
I'm
buy
still
one last night.
yeah. But the point is I'm still participating in the hobby from that perspective. But by the content, you wouldn't know it. Now, unless you're looking at the mail days and the pickups, that'll kind of indicate to you that something's going on with that. But like otherwise, like, oh, is he even collecting anything? Actually, yes, I am. I bought a card on eBay today. I made an offer on it, and it was accepted, and I bought it.
I've said it. I think I've said it on here. I've actually bought more cards. We're not even through May, and I've bought more cards this year already than I did all of last year. So I definitely, and I'm having more fun than I have in a few years. So
sure.
Um,
but the point that I'm making here is that myself, I never stopped. I've never stopped at any point. But the thing is, I just don't think it's that interesting a topic of discussion. Like, it's like, how much do you want to hear me talk about? Hey guys, I spent money today. Does that sound like an exciting topic? It doesn't sound like an exciting topic to me. I already know I bought it, so I don't need to tell myself. I know that. When I do the mail day, that's when I'll go into it like, hey, this is some stuff I picked up and blah blah blah, and maybe this is interesting to me. That's why that type of content, ironically, has never really appealed to me, even as a collector. I'd almost rather, now, if you got a story behind it, going back to what we talked about earlier, if you've got a story behind it, maybe there's been a long-term pursuit. Maybe this was something that you've been keeping an eye out on for a long time, or something that's more obscure, or something you had to research to even figure out what this is. That might be more interesting to me to hear about than you. Oh, hey guys, I spent money today.
Well, let's draw Eric into this because he can give.
Ooh, let's draw.
He doesn't have the YouTube video side of it, but, and I don't mean to throw you under the bus here.
Ooh.
But we kind of discussed it before we went and started recording, and you're gonna appreciate it after I say this.
Okay,
I'll that I'm not trying to be mean.
No,
Because this ties into the conversation. All right, you post your pickups and things like that on Instagram.
I do.
And you had made the comment about how sometimes you feel like you weren't getting the engagement on your Instagram or whatever, and that it kind of sucked because you post these cool things and write these nice stories, but people weren't engaging with it, right?
I kind of want to play along, but what if you remember, and Carlos, you can back me up. I said that that in jest, and how I make my coworkers like my stuff, and I joke around with them.
Except for the fire emoji. You're very passionate about the fire emojis.
Yeah. But
no, I'm not being like mean or setting you up or anything. It's an example because it's a social media aspect.
If I had zero engagement, it wouldn't make a ton of sense to even have an account, right? So,
right,
if I get 20 people, I'm usually pretty satisfied with that. And there's usually all people I know and interact with, and in other ways. And it's a way to share the hobby with a group. When it goes above 20, I kind of am a little bit amazed because I don't know all these people, and yet they find me and or the items I'm showing interesting. So that's kind of neat, but yeah, I mean, if you're not getting people acknowledging what you're putting out there, there's this sense of, why am I doing this?
And that's why I wanted to use that as an example, because your Instagram is majority you showing your collection or talking about a pickup you've got, or whatever. So it is, in a sense, collector content, not on the YouTube platform, just on a different social media platform. And so it's relatable there because you're not getting I can't think of big names or whatever that's on Instagram, but somebody that's putting up updates and all that crap and has, a 5 or 6 figure follower count or whatever, that's getting, hundreds or thousands of likes and comments and all this other stuff, but you're getting your friends, because this hobby, at the end of the day, when you're collecting and you're sharing things, usually the only people that give a shit are the people that know you and are your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Now, one
like,
thing,
to
now one,
Carlos's
now one thing I
point
want
with,
to touch on. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, to your point of the video side of it, you have to find the people that are interested or give a crap about what you're collecting, whether because it's you or because they are interested in the same thing.
Mhm.
And it's just hard with so much content out there to be able to pick all of those people and get them driven to your channel without a reason. Like he said earlier, you put mail day, well, hell, there could be thousands of mail day videos. What makes yours important to watch it?
Mhm. Yeah, unless you're invested. So I'll touch on your point and kind of carry it forward. Unless you're specifically invested in someone's specific journey. Like, say, for example, I'll give an example, and this is not something I've done, but let's say, for example, you wake up tomorrow and you decide, I am going to work on the T206 set. The T206 set is a monster. It's a bear. It's expensive. It takes a lot of work. You're gonna have to really hunt. You know, if you take the short version of the set, quote unquote, it's 520 cards. But you know, after you get past, there's a lot of them that you can pick up relatively easily. But then there's Cy Youngs, then there's Walter Johnson, then there's multiple Ty Cobbs. Like, it can be a challenge from a financial standpoint. Maybe finding the copy you're looking for. Maybe you want them in a certain back. Like, there's a million variations you can add to this. I could easily see people being interested and engaged in a series chronicling your journey of a very specific project if they're invested in it, following your journey. Because now you've got a story built into it. Now you've got your journey going step by step by step by step by step, working towards the set. As opposed to a collector who may be working on a variety of projects, and this is a mail day, and it could be for just about anything. It could be like, I'm grabbing some cards for this, I'm grabbing some cards for that. That's going to be a lot harder to really latch onto and really like follow, because it's not linear. You could watch these mail days out of order, and what difference does it make? There's no sequencing to it. So that's what makes it very difficult to engage in. Bringing back the example you gave, though, Instagram in some ways is a better venue for your collector driven content for pickups and whatever, because you can showcase a card or two at a time, do your write up and blurb, and people can choose to engage how much they want on it. Because, for better or worse, hitting the like on a picture on Instagram is actually very cheap and easy engagement. It's actually not very difficult to do. You can literally just double tap the thing and you've given a heart, you've given a like. But investing the time, even if the video is 5 minutes, investing 5 minutes of your time to sit there and watch, or put it at 2x speed, 2.5 minutes. But that's 2.5 minutes of your time to sit there and watch said video and offer any kind of engagement. It's more of an investment. Whereas you can look at a picture, hey, that's a cool card, click, scroll on to the next one. It took a fraction of a second.
To that same token, there's other sides to it. A lot of the journey, or let's use even just this podcast for an example. A lot of cases, some of those videos doesn't require your attention. You're hearing someone talk about their journey, or listening to folks, like us doing the podcast talk, or Friday nights, 4 hours. People will sit and watch the whole, or listen to the whole thing while they're putting cards in a binder or whatever, because it takes less focus. You can just sit there and hit play and just listen to it. Many cases, if I'm watching certain, like there's certain videos that I'll watch, like maybe before I go to bed or whatever, I'll put it on the TV. And there's no engagement there because I can't hit the like button on the television. I can't comment or chat on the television, but I can sit there and relax and watch it. So there's that element to it too, is where
It's
sometimes
passive
people,
viewership. It's passive viewership. Yeah. So
Yep.
I agree with you. The only reason I was giving the example though of Instagram, just because, so we're on the same page. So if for folks on the YouTube side, this will be easier for you to see. So right now I've opened up my Instagram app. You can't really see what is on the screen, but you can. It's the Instagram app. So right now this is from this is a ComC post right here of a Ray Lewis card. Hey, you'll appreciate this, Brandon. Ray Lewis card. Okay, cool. I just double tapped it there. I gave it a heart. Now I scroll. Boomer's card collection. That's our buddy Paul. There you go. Boom. Like. I'm barely even looking at it. I don't have to look at it. I don't. J66 cards. Boom. There you got a like. I can scroll to the next one. I don't
Like
even have to look at
Oprah,
it, Eric.
everybody gets a like.
Everybody gets a like. Like, look, I can just do this. I don't even have to pay attention to what's going on. I'm doing this for illustrative effect. My point, though, is that the amount of engagement required on here is very minimal. Here you go, J Cards AS. Oh, there you go. There's a nice card from the cup. Boom, you get a like. Whereas opposed to your point, but even passively listening to it, you're still listening to it, at least to a certain degree, maybe out of the side of your ear. The point is, I'm committing more to hitting on a video than I am looking at an Instagram post. Because an Instagram post, I might not even read the caption. I might just look at the picture, be like, oh, that's a cool card. Boom, done. And it's very easy, very quick. So I always appreciate when someone takes the time to engage in one of the piece of content, because obviously it takes a little bit more investment, even if it's just a fraction more, just to do that. But the point is that I'm also looking at the first half of this conversation was as a creator. Now, in this piece, I want to talk about it as a consumer. So now I'm putting my consumer hat on. I've only got a certain amount of time in my day. So I really want to key in and focus on certain types of if I'm going to sit there and watch this, I want you to have something compelling to say, or I want to be entertained. Maybe entertainment is maybe you've got a good story. Maybe you can spin a yarn. Maybe the card is not that special in and of itself, but maybe you've got an interesting story to relate to it. Something cool that can be related to it. That might be worth my time listening to it from that perspective. Or maybe it's, again, part of a long-term project and you have a little background that you can offer on it, and there you go. The problem, and this is an individual thing, so I'll just say for me individually, if I want information on a set or something, I can pretty much Google it. So from the collector content, from that perspective, I don't need you for that. No disrespect. I don't need you for that type of information.
And I'm going to throw this out or ask the question because I'm the same way. I love Trading Card Database or Baseball Cardpedia or any of those sites where they give you the information. And I would almost assume or be willing to guess that you are similar. If you're intrigued into something and you want to research it, you actually appreciate because you can take it levels further and you can dive into it as deep as you want to go. And sometimes that rabbit hole is way the hell deep, but it adds another element to it than just someone maybe telling you about what they want to share with you or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that part of it too? You like diving into it, like looking at the pack odds or, the checklist, the full checklist or what have you.
Yeah. I think the key here is that if we're going to take that extra step, then we have avenues now. I take this as somebody who was on the internet collecting in the 90s. We did not have the resources we have today. And I understand most people would like it's fed to them. They would prefer it's that somebody spoon feeds it to them. But the problem is there's only so much depth you can go to. If I wanted to do that project, that example I gave you, again, just an example for the sake of examples, you want to do the T206 set. You can go to the Net54 forum right now. I don't know if you can find that post. There was a post that somebody made years ago. They created a PDF. They actually drafted an entire PDF that talked about the T206 set, talked about the different backs, talked about how rare the different backs are. They took information from other posters and compiled it into this PDF where if you download it, was available for free. For free, you could get this PDF.
Tracked down the different cards based on miscuts to figure out how they were laid out because nobody had ever seen an uncut. And so they figured out which cards were next to which cards and all that by using miscuts and stuff too.
Yeah. So I would be going to the Net54 forum and utilizing this depth of very deep knowledge. I'm not going to YouTube. With respect to YouTube. And I like this forum, clearly. I like this format. I like the platform itself. I'm on the platform conversing with you right now. But the point is that if I want that kind of depth, I'm going to go hit the books, or I'm going to go look at these forums where there is this accumulated information where I know I can get the type of answers that I'm really looking for. That isn't to say there's anything wrong with having, hey, maybe somebody provides this to you. Maybe you didn't know about it at all. Maybe, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more about some 90s. If somebody wanted to make a video where they covered a couple of things, that's cool. I'm not specifically seeking that out. I could see the value in it. But again, we're back to niche. So like it's got to be the right day. Today is the day that I want to hear about, 1995 finest refractors. Brandon, do I have a video on 1995 finest? Maybe somebody made one. And maybe across my fingers, maybe we got lucky and maybe somebody made that specific video I need on that day because today I'm in that mood. But if I don't have that, then what am I going to do here?
Shout out to Refractor Jones. That would be a good video for you to make.
Perfect.
Get your YouTube
Exactly.
channel started.
Perfect. Exactly. But the point of Brandon, how niche, like how specific am I getting there? Like that's a tough one. That's not a fair expectation.
It's almost like
For me to
69,
expect
70 tops hockey.
Yeah, that's weird. Like imagine it's bizarre. Like who would do such a thing? But the point is that it is so narrowly focused. I can't blame somebody for not like, okay, you want to make it, but then who's your audience? It's like, who are you? You better know that somebody has been clamoring for this specifically. He's like, guys, I needs to know. I need to know. That's a tough one, man. I don't
The
know.
91 Fleer video would be interesting.
Oh, Eric and I are literally working on that. We've been working for the last 6 months. We cannot agree on a single draft. It is the most important set in the hobby. Eric can't even agree. We can't even agree what shade of yellow it is. It's important we get it right. We need the right Pantone number. This is important, man. Key set in the hobby.
You know, for as many of those cards that were printed, though, I think most people knew how terrible they were and just went ahead and threw them away back in the day, because you don't see that many of them even in the junk wax collection.
In the shelf upstairs somewhere, I have a factory set. I'll go hit up the factories. Let's go 1991.
I have a few of them. I have a few of the cards, but it just dawned on me, like, when you come across the junk wax boxes, they're so blatant and bright that you can't miss them. But I don't think I've ever came across like a huge stash. I think most people knew these things suck and just throw them away.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So let me bring it about. Let me bring it around here to kind of bring it around to a couple of thoughts. So first, let me ask for folks on YouTube who have the comment section available. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So let me ask a question here. We talked about two different sides of it, but let me ask this question for you, because this is one of my favorite little topics that comes up once in a while. From a content perspective, when you tune in and watch the content, what are you looking for exactly? For me, it's about the entertainment. It's about the story. It can be about the cards. I don't mind that, but it needs to have the entertainment or the story to go along with it, because I think that is what makes it a lot more interesting and engaging to me. I like long form content personally, but maybe you prefer short form. So that's why I'm actually curious. I'd like you to be specific. What kind of hobby content do you like? Do you really want to be like heavy informational? Do you want that collector driven, like really niche specific content? Or are you interested more in the story side of it, like that portion of it? Do you actually watch the mail day videos? Is that a thing that you are interested in? Obviously, you're in the minority, but that doesn't mean that you might not have some interest in it. But for me, I like long form, but if it's going to be long form, I want the story elements woven into it, because I think that adds to it. It can still have the information, and I still think that can be really interesting. But the other piece of it that kind of goes against what the Iowa Dave was talking about there, if it's going to be legitimately long form content, like a live stream, I want to hear your sports takes. I want to hear some of these other pieces, because I think it adds variety to the conversation. Because if you want to have a really specific focused conversation, then I don't need 4 hours. If it's going to be that long form, then we got to go in a couple different directions to make this interesting. If you want to be that niche though, then 25, 30 minutes might be enough. Because you're really keyed in on focused on a certain topic. Then I want you really locked in and focused on what you're talking about then, because I think that would make it more consumable from that perspective. That's just me. But if you're going to take your time and talk about this and talk about that, well, then I'd like you to be able to spin a yarn a little bit. That's just kind of my take on the content side of things.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said earlier, and again, I'll use this as an example. 62 tops, Bruins team set. Nothing exciting there, except when you realize that this is Willie O'Ree's rookie appearance, and then you could start talking about him and his impact on the game. That's what I love. I love hearing these stories. I could hand this to anybody, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's nice," and then I'd be like, "Well, you see this gentleman in the back row? Let me tell you about who he is." Well, now you have a story. Now this is a piece of history. This is something that never happened before in the history of the world. So that's the stuff I love. Tell me a story. Tell me why this is important. Tell me why this is unique. Why should I care? Again, kind of repeating everything from earlier on. The breakers who are just like throwing down the base cards. You don't even if you were interested in those, you can't. They go by so fast you can't even look at them. And even when they hit something big, they don't tell you about the player. They don't tell you about the team. They don't tell you about their stats. They just tell you about how much the card. They screaming and hollering, and then tell you about how much money it's worth. And then they put it in a holder and put that to the side and start again. So that doesn't entertain me. I want them to pull up, a Babe Ruth card and, from, 33 Gaudy and tell me where they got it. Did it, did they get handed down from their grandfather? Did they, we heard all these great stories, yeah, my great grandfather was a doorman at this hotel in New York and, used to open the door for Babe Ruth, when you come back for him again, whatever. These are the stories I would much rather hear and be a part of and take something away from the time I give to watch something rather than I bought this today or just break. Oh my God! Look at this! Woo!
Well, listen. I don't mean to break this to you, Eric, but if you were opening SP Signature Legends, you'd be literally doing that for every card. There's no more exciting set in the hobby, as far as I'm aware.
There's only one card in the SP Signature Legends that is worth getting excited about, and it is such a big deal. We put it in the thick lucite.
That's right. Halef and Gil. Halef and Gil, y'all.
You don't mess around here. That is some thick lucite. This
now,
whole
Brandon, let me
blow up.
Before Eric gets too excited about Halef and Gil, because we could go on Halef and Gil all night. We could. But we're gonna stop it there. Mercifully, we'll save it for another episode. Brandon, so creator, consumer. I want to ask the audience at the end again. I'm going to ask them because I'm curious. Like, if you do comment, I'm serious. I actually want to know what is it that you are actually wanting to watch. Obviously, what do you watch currently? But what do you actually enjoy, or what actually attracts you to clicking on watching something? Maybe if you subscribe to something and you just generally support, well, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm being more specific. If you're clicking on something and you're curious about it, what is it that you're looking for that draws you in on that? Are you a long form person or short form person? Do you look for those live streams? Is that it? Is it the engagement side of it? Because that could be another aspect. Maybe you go to the live stream because then at least you're interacting. Maybe that's a piece of it. But if it's pre-recorded, what actually attracts you to clicking on something that maybe you're not subscribed to? Because I'd be curious to see what people are actually clicking on versus the Iowa Dave thing is almost like an idealized version. Like it's what's in his head, this collector-driven content. The data's not backing that up for me. That's been the whole point of this conversation. The data is not backing that up for me, from what I've observed. But maybe you're the exception. Maybe tell me I'm wrong. You click on all the collector-driven content. That's all you care about. Maybe that's you. I don't know. Brandon, any kind of thoughts on that from your side
of it? Well, to be honest, I don't really watch hardly any of the newsy stuff. Most cases, unless it's floating around the Discord, and then I'm like the curiosity peaks, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? I might click on something to go see what the conversation is about.
So you're saying Jason Robertson on the thumbnail is what we need. We need Jason Robertson on the thumbnail, and that might do it right there.
That might it might do that, but
just
no. I think the big key for me at this moment, okay, and things have changed, obviously.
Sure.
But in the moment, the hobby content like I was listening to your solo pod earlier, and keyword is listening. I was doing my labels for eBay and all of that,
Yeah.
and you weren't showing anything. It was just
Mhm.
you talking, and I could cut it on and listen. I'm usually doing so many things, I don't have time to just sit and watch a screen
Mhm.
or be engaged in what is going on. So the stuff that I can just listen to, like I was listening to a podcast from one of the resellers when I was mowing the grass earlier this evening. Um, that really, and I've heard a lot of people say they enjoy podcast type stuff. I don't know if they enjoy ours, but anyway, if you do, comment below. Um, but the aspect of getting in the car, cutting something on, being able to listen to it, or like I said, mowing the grass, listen to it. Doing work on the computer, cut it on, you can listen to it. You don't have to be looking. And to Eric's point, if it's somebody even showing cards or a mail day, there has to be a story attached to it. Because otherwise, you have to your point earlier, you have to put forth the effort of being engaged in the content. And a lot of people, that's not what they're doing anymore. My wife she works from home and she literally turns on like the true crime shows and stuff like that solely because she can listen to them and she doesn't have to be watching the screen. She can work while she's, hearing it in the background. So
Yeah.
I think that is where I am at with a lot. I don't watch a ton of TV to begin with. Um, my wife thinks I'm weird. In most cases, when I'm down in the basement working, I don't even have like the radio or anything on.
Oh, that's not.
I don't know if I can't focus on multiple. I don't know what it is, but I just
No, you're a
I
crazy
don't
person.
really.
You're
Yeah, I'm probably am weird. But no, I would
I was gonna say
say
that's a given. We assume that. Go on.
yes.
with my current place within the hobby of refocusing and finding, I don't want to say the old route, but similar to the old route of what I was doing because I am being picky now. Um, the news and all that stuff, like I don't really care on a lot of it, like it's because it's not going to affect me. Um, and so if there's like I said, if there's conversation, I'll go see what the hell's going on, or if there's somebody that I'm subscribed to has something interesting or whatever, I'll pop in and listen to it or see what's going on. But Eric hasn't put a video out in a long, long, long time, so I haven't caught his. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm gonna be kind of vanilla and boring. If it's easy to listen to, even Friday night, if I don't get on engaged with and join you guys, I try to pop on and give Eric a little bit of hell and engage in the chat a little bit. But I also can like listen to it and just pop on and chat, occasionally if I'm busy doing something else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think what you're
I think
describing
it's a
is more of
lot
a
of
passive
content
thing.
has to also be convenient.
I'm
Mhm.
just looking and at my last Instagram post, and it looks as if Bobbles hasn't liked it yet.
He's
Your
probably using
last
his
one?
burner. He's using his burner.
Can you
Uh,
do you think you can remedy that, please? Because likes are very important for me, and this, I don't have a lot else going on in my life,
oh, you
and
don't really don't.
and
That's
and,
not a joke.
and
What I was gonna say is I'll plug Eric's Instagram at the end so that people can send him hate and like his posts. So here's the thing. Uh, I think what Brandon kind of is touching on here, and we'll kind of slowly wind down on this. Like it was a good discussion. Once in a while, I like coming back to the content discussion because there's a lot of room I think to converse on. By the way, it changes over time because people's preferences may change over time. So you're not set in stone. What maybe works for you now may be different than what worked for you before or what'll work for you in the future. But one of the
Mhm.
things that Brandon was talking about, though, is that there is a whole segment of the audience, and just for this and anything else, that is more passive. By that I mean they consume it, they listen to it, they may never engage in it. You may never hear from them. I had that at the expo. Hey, I watch and listen all the time, and I never see their comments. I don't know their handle necessarily, but they don't comment on it. And I always try to encourage them. Hey, once in a while, it's say hello. That's it. It doesn't have to be like a big elaborate thing, but it's nice. It's nice to have at least a concept. You can see the numbers are indicating somebody's clicking on this, and it tells you that somebody's watching it or listening to it or whatever, but you don't have a context for it. On the Friday, we do have a little bit more interactivity because a lot of times the folks will at least chat with us, so we can have that element of the back and forth on it. But on the other stuff, because it's pre-recorded, I don't know what the circumstances are that you're watching or listening. So it's only when you comment that then I get a little bit of an understanding of what's going on. Otherwise, we have no idea.
And
we can just see the numbers on the screen.
To give a little bit of context to folks that may not actually do content but engage or absorb content, consume content, the engagement isn't just nice for the analytics side of things. It's nice for the creator to see that someone is acknowledging the video or work that's being presented. The word community is used a lot in the YouTube space and all the different YouTube categories out there. And it is a sense of that because like you do a video and a lot of creators will acknowledge the comments because they appreciate it. And it's kind of a sense of communicating. Like right now, us three in these podcasts form, I presented it to Carlos and stuff because I love doing it with Refractor. I used to go live every night because it was easy to engage with people that were talking. You're having a conversation. The comment section is the addition to the video to allow for the conversation to take place. Even if it's a mail day, hey, nice pickups. The creator's going to appreciate that. A collection sharing, hey, cool collection. The creator's going to appreciate that. So don't think it's just for the analytics side. It is the conversational side of the video and the interaction. So just keep that in mind as well.
Go ahead.
I've said this. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I mean it more than ever. The reason that I enjoy doing this, it isn't just hanging out with friends of mine and having some laughs and having a good time. The thing I really enjoy the most about doing this is on Friday nights, we have people waiting for us.
Paying the like button.
Paying the like button is my second favorite thing. We have people waiting for us at 8:00. We get like 50 people at a time, 50 plus people at a time. And the chat is just going crazy and they're totally engaged and they're in on all the jokes. And if that wasn't the case, I don't know I'd still be doing this after these last handful of years. The people that join us on Fridays and participate, and that's what makes it fun. And my appreciation for them is very great because I just don't think I could, take time out of my Friday nights every single, week for all these years now and have, someone, we start at 8, someone pops in around 8:35, stays 5 minutes, leaves, then 5 people show up around 9:15. I'd be like, I'm not doing this. But the fact that at 8:01, there's people going, where are you guys? That obviously we're doing something right. And we have a good group of people that are participating along with us. I don't think it's a 5-person show or however many, I sit there and I could count all the guys that we do this with, but 5, 6 of us that routinely do this on Fridays. I think having the 50 join us, they're the ones that make the show, not the people on the screen. So
I think it's a big piece of the puzzle. I think it's a big piece of the puzzle.
I appreciate them greatly. And that's why I continue to come back and do it because, if 5 people were watching every week, I'd be like, I'm not doing this.
I do want to mention though, Eric, you do know why the people come back every week, right?
I believe it is to make fun of me.
They're waiting for the freaking crumble code to work.
One
Yeah.
day.
Be lying to them.
One
without.
day.
Yeah.
It's just their consistent anger, Eric. It's we talked about this earlier. So one final note to kind of put a button on this whole thing. We talked about the whole newsy thing. You know why, Brandon, it works? Because anger. People will engage with anger. Anger sells. We can sell anger. That's why I said earlier, mail days. Oh, mail days are so pleasant. So what? That's why the engagement isn't there. Now, if you said, "Hey, these are some cards. Fuck these cards," and then you get some people upset at you. Then all of a sudden, the mail day goes off. Like these cards are all trash. It's like, and then they're like, "Why is this person getting these cards? Then why are they a masochist?" I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you put the title like burning my entire mail day with some lighters and stuff.
Yeah. And
Probably
pick popular players and pick popular sets and pick things that people are like, oh my God, my life savings I spent on those cards. What are you saying? They're trash. That's a mail day that would probably take off. That would probably work.
Yeah.
I have burnt cards and set cards on fire live on the show before, so it has been done.
It has been done. It has been done. But the point is that everyone's going to have a different angle and in terms of what they're interested in. That's why I wanted to have kind of that discussion. And it is good to revisit this topic from time to time. Since I mentioned it, I will also include in the description the link to the Stacking Slabs episode that kind of inspired this conversation. The reason why I brought it up this time around. So I'll include a link to that if all of you want to check that out and see. Again, that's a different perspective. I don't necessarily agree with that perspective. I talked a lot about why that is the case tonight, just from my observations. But I'm only giving my observations based on my path as making videos and kind of doing that engagement and doing it from that perspective. Somebody may have a completely different opinion on terms of what their experience has been creating, or as a consumer, you may be like, no, all those videos that you're talking about that you don't see that engagement in, I love those. I click on every single one of those that I come across. And if that's the case, I'd like to hear about it. This is where I'm asking for the engagement. I would like to get some feedback from folks who do listen to this, because I'd be curious, what is your preference in terms of that? What actually draws you to it? If you are just subscribed and you're supporting the videos, that's awesome. That's always appreciated. But I'm also curious if there is something that draws you to certain types of content versus another, and what that is. That's what I want to get a little bit of a sense of. So let's wander down on that. You can follow Sanderson to Orr on Instagram. So like Eric's post, so he'll feel better. You can just do that, and then you can still send him hate mail. So if you're mad about something we said, then you can send him DMs of anger, but then like his posts.
Yeah.
Like his posts, send DMs of anger. So then we've got that going for us. Brandon, Bobbles and Ball Cards. And again, he knows who 540 Flips is, so you can follow that too. And then that way, we'll be able to get to the bottom of who 540 Flips is.
I think Eric has scared him off because he hasn't done a video in a long time. I don't know.
God help him. I'll find him. That's all I'm saying. God help him.
Interesting. So you can follow those ones. Also, you can follow the links in the description. You can check out some of the ones that we mentioned earlier, recommended. I want to thank AMGcollectibles.ca, and the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel. Follow it. Go check the video out with that break. Like I said, you may be impressed. There's a pretty good pull in that break. I was actually quite impressed with it when I saw it myself. So you can check that out for sure. And then we'll be back with another podcast episode this week. Some stuff that came in the shop. We'll talk about a little bit of those different things, and maybe talk about the break in question a little bit as well, and the pull that came out of that. So we'll have a little bit of fun with that. So here's another episode. More videos coming up on the channel for those folks following on the YouTube. There is an audio version of this as well that doesn't have the visuals and the hand gestures, so you're missing out on some of those. But if you're interested in listening to it in that way, it is available to you in that way. And also the Friday live stream on the YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out before, I do recommend it. It's a very different experience. It's at least 5% less mature than what we're presenting right now. Shocking, but true.
It is.
That is a fact. Now, unfortunately, you may not get a lot of card content on it. You will get some for sure, but I can't promise the entire show will be. And by that, I mean the likelihood is it's not going to be the whole show.
It's pretty much complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, there will be other things. So bring your 90s music knowledge, because that may come up into play. At least it did last week. I can't promise it'll be this week. Who knows? Who knows where we'll go with it? But some stuff to think about. Anyway, so that's it for myself, Brandon, and Eric. This is episode 77 of the BIC podcast. Thank you for checking it out. Hit the like button. Hit the like button. engagement, and also leave some comments because I want some of the answers. See? If you can see the video, check that out. It's pretty good. All right, so that'll be it for this time around. We'll catch you in the next one.